we begin the descent. You felt it not just arousal, but pull, compulsion, something that bypasses choice. You don't understand what's happening inside your skull. So your brain gives you a reason. I just like it. But there is no you making decisions anymore. There's only circuitry chasing itself. Topic 1. The hijacked reward system. How dopamine rewires your brain for craving, not connection. You are not addicted to pleasure. You are addicted to anticipation. You believe you watch porn because it feels good, because it gives you relief, escape, stimulation. But the truth is colder. You watch because your brain has learned to want it, even when you don't. Because deep in the neural machinery you mistake for yourself, something has been hijacked. Dopamine is not a pleasure chemical. That's a lie you were told in high school biology. Dopamine is the wanting molecule, the molecule of chasing. It spikes not when you're satisfied, but when you're close, when you anticipate, when you're almost there, when your brain smells reward in the air and lunges forward like a starving animal. Porn doesn't deliver the reward. It dangles it. And every frame is a carrot on a string. Researchers at the University of Cambridge found that when porn users view explicit material, their brains don't light up in pleasure centers. They light up in the ventral striatum, the region associated with craving, not satisfaction. It's the same region that activates in drug addicts when they see the drug, not use it. Porn is a conditioned stimulus. It taps into a pathway millions of years old, a loop designed to reinforce behavior crucial for survival. Eating, mating, learning. But this loop never evolved for infinite novelty on demand. It never anticipated that you would be able to summon endless virtual mates with a flick of your thumb. You weren't meant to survive your own invention. Every time you click on a new video, your brain releases dopamine. Not because the clip is rewarding, but because it's new. This is the novelty bias, a deeply embedded biological mechanism that once helped your ancestors explore new environments and avoid stagnation. But now it's been weaponized. The result? You're not chasing satisfaction. You're chasing the next dopamine hit. But here's the paradox. The more dopamine you flood your system with, the more your brain adapts. It starts reducing dopamine receptors, a phenomenon called downregulation. Your baseline shifts. Now, normal pleasure doesn't register. Now a touch, a kiss, a glance, nothing. It's not enough. It can't compete. And the only thing that spikes the needle anymore is porn. The loop feeds itself. Wanting leads to watching. Watching leads to numbness. Numbness leads to wanting more. And so the spiral tightens. Your brain doesn't know if what you're doing is good or bad. It only knows you keep doing it. So it learns. It wires. It builds a map, neuron by neuron, that says, this is where we go when we want to feel alive. Addiction isn't a choice. It's a learned survival pattern misfiring in a digital context. And you are not the driver. In the 1950s, psychologist James Olds conducted a chilling experiment. He implanted electrodes into the brains of rats so they could stimulate their own pleasure centers by pressing a lever. The result? They pressed it over and over, hundreds of times an hour. They stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Some died at the lever. You are not so different. The phone is your lever. The click is your press. The brain does not distinguish between food, sex, or fantasy. It only knows, this keeps lighting me up, so it burns down everything else. Relationships feel like work. Focus becomes impossible. You wonder why you feel so hollow. But your brain is not broken. It's just been rewired by design. Porn doesn't just change what you want. It changes how you want. The mesolimbic reward pathway, the center of desire and compulsion, has no morality, no end. It can't be satisfied. You cannot watch enough porn to get it out of your system, any more than you can eat enough sugar to cure your cravings. More makes it worse, because each new spike digs the trench deeper. Each viewing session strengthens the neural pathways until they're faster than thought. You're not choosing anymore. You're reacting to stress, to boredom, to fatigue. The trigger doesn't matter. The loop is automatic. And then it happens. Even when you're not aroused, you still watch. Even when you don't want to, you still click. Even when you hate yourself afterward, you still go back. That's not desire. That's programming. Your mind has outsourced reward to a machine that never gives it. The pleasure is always one click further. So you keep clicking, but the system doesn't care about your fulfillment. It cares about engagement. Porn sites are designed to hold your attention, not to satisfy you. The infinite scroll, the autoplay, the algorithm feeding more extreme content, it's all behavioral engineering. You're not browsing. You're being conditioned. And each click is not a choice. It is a vote for what you become. So what do you call a life where your pleasure no longer belongs to you? Where your mind can be reprogrammed by repetition? Where your reward system obeys an algorithm? Where your dopamine has been divorced from reality? And if you're no longer choosing what to want, who or what is? End of topic 1. Ready for topic 2. The novelty trap, Coolidge effect. Why your brain never gets tired of new? We continue. You think you get bored because you've seen too much. But the truth is worse. Your brain doesn't get tired of the same. It gets addicted to the new. Not just new videos, new bodies, new angles, new combinations, new thresholds of extremity. You chase novelty because your brain was never designed to stop. Topic 2. The novelty trap, Coolidge effect. Why your brain never gets tired of new. Imagine a rat in a cage. A female rat is introduced. The male rat mates, then rests. If the same female remains, he loses interest. But introduce a new female, and he springs back into action. Again and again. This goes on until exhaustion or collapse. This is not preference. This is biology. It has a name, the Coolidge effect. It is the evolutionary drive to pursue new sexual partners endlessly. Not for love, not even for pleasure, but for genetic variety. It ensures maximum reproductive spread. It works in rats. It works in primates. It works in you. And in the digital age, it's been turned against you. Because unlike real life, porn offers endless novelty. One click, new body. Another, new scenario. Another, new angle, new category, new threshold. In the animal kingdom, novelty is rare. In your browser, it's infinite. You were built for scarcity. You now live in excess. The reward system interprets each new clip as a new mating opportunity. Your brain doesn't know it's a screen. It sees a new partner. It releases dopamine accordingly. But this doesn't lead to satisfaction. Because there's no consummation. There's no resolution. Just the stimulation of the possibility of more. You don't want to finish. You want to keep finding. This is why users report compulsively cycling through tabs, skimming through videos, never settling. It's not about arousal anymore. It's about the hunt. The high doesn't come from watching. It comes from searching. You've trained your brain to salivate not at sex, but at scrolling. Like a gambler addicted to pulling the lever, not the win. In one 2006 study, subjects exposed to novel sexual stimuli showed increased arousal and desire, regardless of the attractiveness or content. What mattered wasn't quality. It was newness. And this effect doesn't fade. It accelerates. This is the trap. You build tolerance. The same content becomes dull. So you escalate, not because you want to, but because you have to. Vanilla turns to fetish. Fetish turns to taboo. Taboo turns to the grotesque. This is not moral decay. This is neural adaptation. Your brain builds resistance. You compensate with extremity, but the extremity never feels new enough. Because dopamine is not about enjoyment. It is about expectation. So you chase the next novel thing, hoping it will give you what the last 10 did not. But it never does. The high is always in the future. The content is never enough. And you scroll on, even if it disgusts you, even if you're watching things you swore you never would, even if the thing that excites you now horrifies the version of you that started this. This is not freedom. This is a treadmill made of novelty. And it moves faster the longer you run. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, decision-making, morality, gets overwhelmed by the dopaminergic flood. In real time, it loses control. The primitive brain, the limbic system, takes over. You're not thinking. You're reacting. You're not choosing. You're triggered. You're not even present. You're chasing. You are now a creature ruled by novelty. And novelty always demands more. Your tastes mutate. Your identity mutates. Not because you discovered who you are, but because the algorithm gave you what you clicked on. And you clicked not because you wanted it, but because it was different. The content does not reflect your desires. It invents them. You are not exploring your sexuality. You're being rewritten by it. And what happens when the novelty runs out? When the categories are exhausted? When even the grotesque is boring? You escalate, or you go numb, or worse. You merge the pursuit of novelty with your real life. You begin to look at people through the lens of content. You disassemble them into features. You treat them like categories. You fragment them. Because your brain has learned that novelty is not found in depth, but in replacement. And now, no one is enough. Not because they lack, but because your brain cannot stop searching. This is not sexual freedom. It is compulsion disguised as liberation. The philosopher Zygmunt Bauman called it liquid modernity, a world of endless options and disposable connections. Nothing solid, nothing lasting. Porn is its perfect metaphor. Endlessly fluid, no meaning, no history, just the next thing, and the next, and the next, until you don't remember what you started looking for, until you forget what desire felt like before it became chase, until novelty becomes the only thing that feels real, and the moment you get it, it dies. So ask yourself, if everything new fades the moment you touch it, what kind of future can you build on a hunger that cannot hold anything? Into topic 2, ready to descend into topic 3, porn versus real intimacy, why fake stimulation feels more rewarding than real touch. We descend again. You say you want connection. You say you crave touch, love, closeness, but you reach for a screen instead of a hand, a fantasy instead of face. You convince yourself that porn is just a substitute, a placeholder. But deep down, you know it's not replacing intimacy. It's destroying your capacity for it. Topic 3. Porn versus real intimacy. Why fake stimulation feels more rewarding than real touch. What if the problem isn't that you can't connect with others, but that your brain no longer wants to? You are wired to connect. Biologically, psychologically, neurochemically. Intimacy is not a luxury. It's a survival mechanism. Oxytocin, vasopressin, serotonin. These are the molecules that bind you to others, that make skin meaningful, that make eye contact sacred, that make the presence of another human matter. But porn hijacks that. Porn gives you the illusion of closeness without risk, without vulnerability, without exposure. You watch, and it watches back, but you're always in control. You decide when it starts, when it ends. You mute the parts that are too real, skip the parts that are too slow. There's no awkwardness. No rejection, no emotional reciprocity, only performance, only obedience, only arousal, without responsibility. But the brain doesn't care. It registers the simulacrum of connection and rewards it anyway. Your mirror neurons fire. Your limbic system responds. The circuitry meant for bonding, the same system that makes a hug feel good, that makes a lover's breath meaningful, now fires for a pixelated stranger you'll never meet. And over time, that becomes enough. In 2011, researchers found that frequent porn users had significantly lower sexual satisfaction and intimacy in real-life relationships. Another study published in JAMA Psychiatry in 2016 showed decreased gray matter volume in the reward centers of frequent viewers, specifically in the striatum, the same region that helps mediate human attachment. What does that mean? It means porn doesn't just take your time. It takes your capacity. Your brain adapts to what you give it. If you feed it real love, real, awkward, uncertain, human love, it strengthens the circuits for empathy, patience, presence. But if you feed it only control, spectacle, instant reward, it deactivates the rest. Because what you don't use, you lose. And you've stopped using intimacy. You've replaced it with imagery. You tell yourself that when the right person comes, it will be different, that you'll feel again, that you'll connect again, but you won't, because your brain has redefined pleasure. It now expects high-intensity, low-effort stimulation. A real person is too slow, too uncertain, too alive. Real intimacy doesn't spike dopamine like porn does. It trickles. It grows. It requires presence, not just stimulation. But you've trained yourself to chase arousal, not connection. Stimulation, not sensation. You don't want to feel safe. You want to feel something. So you reach for the artificial because it feels more real than the real ever could. You don't hold someone's gaze anymore. You don't let them get close. You don't let them see you because they can't compete with her, with them, with the endless stream of bodies and scenarios, an impossibly perfect fantasy. In your mind, you compare everyone you meet to what you've watched. Not just their looks, but their behavior, their sound, their shape, their scripted willingness. And no one lives up to it, because real people are not actors. Real sex is not cinema. Real love is not an algorithm. But your mind no longer wants the real. It wants the optimized, the filtered, the available on demand. You have rewired your desire to reject unpredictability. And people, real people, are the most unpredictable thing on earth. So you stay in the fantasy. Not because it's better, but because it's easier. You don't have to perform. You don't have to communicate. You don't have to give. You only have to consume. And even if you do find someone, even if you do try, you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel less. This is called anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. It's what happens when overstimulation has burned out the receptors. When your mind expects fireworks, but life only offers candlelight. So now you fake it. Pretend to care. Pretend to feel. Or you avoid it altogether. Because real intimacy feels like work. Like risk. Like slowness. And your dopamine-starved brain cannot wait. Cannot invest. Cannot stay. And even if someone touches you, you don't feel it in your skin. You feel it as a comparison. Because the screen taught you what pleasure should look like. And your body, or theirs, doesn't measure up. Porn has become your blueprint. And real people are now the distortion. Do you see it yet? This isn't about lust. It's about loneliness. You are alone, not because no one wants you, but because the part of you that once could receive love has been drowned in static. You no longer want someone. You want something, a shape, a sensation, a role, not a soul. You call this preference, but it is loss. So ask yourself, if you can no longer touch another person without comparing them to a simulation, then who or what are you actually loving? End of topic 3. Ready for topic 4. Neuroplasticity and addiction, how your brain reshapes itself around porn use. You think you can stop any time, that you're in control, that if it ever got bad enough, you just quit. But the truth is, you are no longer watching porn. Porn is watching you. The more you return to it, the less of you comes back. What feels like a habit is something far worse. A neural architecture rebuilding itself around compulsion. Topic 4. Neuroplasticity and addiction. How your brain reshapes itself around porn use. Your brain is not a fixed thing. It is a living organism of circuits and chemical signals, a web of electricity and memory that rebuilds itself around what you do most. Every thought, every repetition, every behavior carves a deeper groove into the mind. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's terrifying ability to change itself. And it does not care what you build, only that you build it. Addiction is not just a psychological urge. It's a structural change. And porn, consumed repeatedly, obsessively, compulsively, becomes more than an influence. It becomes an architect. It remodels you. In MRI scans of frequent porn users, researchers at the Max Planck Institute found reduced gray matter in the right caudate and lower activity in the dorsal striatum, two regions central to decision-making and reward processing. The more you watch, the more these systems atrophy. Not metaphorically, physically. It's not that porn users are weak. It's that their brain is learning the wrong lesson, and learning it perfectly. Each time you engage, your neurons fire in the same path. And neurons that fire together, wire together. This is Hebb's law, the core principle of plasticity. Over time, that neural path becomes faster, stronger, automatic. Your brain begins to prioritize it, preserve it, protect it. Soon, this pathway activates when you're stressed, when you're lonely, when you're bored, when you're happy. Porn becomes the answer to every emotional question. Not because it is pleasure, but because it is familiarity. Like a song played too many times, your mind begins to default to it. Not because you want to, but because the wiring demands it. This is addiction, not craving, not indulgence, but repetition so powerful that the body forgets how to be without it. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's control center, begins to weaken. Studies show it shrinks in size and function in those with behavioral addictions. This is the region responsible for restraint, judgment, goals. With every relapse, it grows quieter, less decisive, less able to say no. Now the limbic brain is in charge. The animal brain, the reflexive, reactive, impulsive machinery that doesn't ask what's good, only what's now. The longer this continues, the harder it is to reverse. You're not stuck because of shame. You're stuck because of plasticity. Your brain built a house, and now it lives there, even if it's burning. This is why users describe watching content they don't even enjoy, why they keep scrolling hours after orgasm, why they feel numb, detached, even disgusted, but keep going. The neural circuit doesn't care how you feel. It only knows this is the path we run, and we run it well. Even in withdrawal, the system doesn't stop. It screams. Triggers appear in your environment. A glance, a memory, a moment of stillness. The circuitry lights up. We know what fixes this. It says, we've done it 1,000 times. Because the brain is not moral. It is efficient. And you, the conscious you, are no longer steering. In one Stanford study, addiction was described as pathological learning. Learning that becomes irreversible without intervention. Not unlearning, not forgetting, but overriding. Porn isn't something you watch. It's something that rewrites you. And the more you resist, the more the brain tightens its grip, because you taught it that porn equals survival. Not pleasure, not love, survival. In that moment of pain or loneliness or anxiety, you fed it the one thing it recognized. So it made it permanent. What does it mean when the organ that once helped you love now only knows how to consume? When the tool for connection becomes a trap of isolation. When a mind builds a cage and forgets how to leave. The tragedy of neuroplasticity is not just that the brain can be shaped. It's that it can be shaped wrong, and you'll still call it you. This is not about morality. This is not about shame. This is about identity. Because the self you believe you are, the one who chooses, who desires, who resists, is being erased and replaced with circuitry. And the worst part? You helped build it. So if you don't remember what it felt like before the screen, before the scroll, before the circuitry turned craving into command, then who are you now? And more importantly, who built you? End of topic 4. Shall we continue into topic 5? Escapism and emotional regulation porn as self-medication for anxiety, boredom, and pain? You always say you'll only watch when you're aroused. But that's not true. You turn to it when you're lonely, when you're anxious, when you're numb. You use it to soothe something you can't name, and it always answers. Not because it heals you, but because it silences the part of you that's still screaming. Topic 5. Escapism and emotional regulation porn as self-medication for anxiety, boredom, and pain. At first, it was about pleasure. Then it became a habit. And now, it's something else entirely, a form of escape. You don't open those tabs because you're turned on. You open them because something inside feels off. You're restless. You're low. You're empty. You need a way out. And porn is the door. But it doesn't lead to relief. It leads to silence. That silence, that temporary vanishing of emotional noise, is what you've come to crave more than anything. Not the orgasm, not the imagery, but the disappearance of thoughts, of stress, of fear. For a few minutes, you get to shut down. You get to stop being yourself. This is not desire. This is anesthesia. Psychologists call it emotional dysregulation, the inability to manage or process your internal states in a healthy way. Most people cope through relationships, creativity, mindfulness, even suffering. But when those tools break down or were never learned, you reach for the easiest, fastest option, a dopamine spike, and porn delivers it. Instantly, predictably, without judgment. It becomes your sedative. The moment something goes wrong, an awkward social moment, a wave of sadness, a bad grade, a rejection, an hour of boredom, the circuitry activates. You don't even notice it happening. You're already scrolling, already zoning out, already numbing the moment with frictionless escape. But this kind of relief comes with a cost. Because you're not learning how to feel through pain, you're escaping it. Every time you run to the screen, you reinforce a simple message to your nervous system. This feeling is unsafe. Avoid it. Over time, your capacity to regulate yourself without stimulation atrophies. You become emotionally fragile. Not weak, not broken, but wired for flight. This is what psychologists call negative reinforcement. The behavior doesn't continue because it brings pleasure, but because it removes discomfort. The reward is not the climax. It's the disappearance of tension. It's not what porn gives you. It's what it takes away. And the brain learns that. Now, sadness equals porn. Loneliness equals porn. Stress, anxiety, boredom, fatigue, all equal porn. Not as desire, but as a conditioned response. Like Pavlov's dogs, your emotional pain becomes the bell, and porn becomes the drool. But unlike the dogs, you don't get a treat. You get numbness. And when the numbness fades, the emotion returns. Only now it's buried beneath guilt, confusion, or self-loathing. So you escape again. The loop tightens. You're not masturbating. You're coping. And the more often you use it this way, the more your emotional system collapses into helplessness. You stop seeking connection when you're sad. You stop confronting problems when you're overwhelmed. You stop reaching out. Because porn is easier, safer, immediate, and it's always there. But it doesn't care for you. It doesn't hold you. It doesn't ask who you are or why you hurt. It only says, come back. And you do. Because what else can you do when your own emotions feel unbearable? What else can you do when you've forgotten how to sit with them? Because porn is not just a habit now. It is your emotional regulator. And the worst part? It works. It gives you just enough relief to survive. Just enough sedation to keep going. Just enough stillness to quiet the noise. But it takes something in return. Your emotional range shrinks. Your tolerance for discomfort plummets. Your resilience fades. You no longer grow through pain. You run from it. You no longer express your needs. You mute them. And now you wonder why you feel so distant, so emotionally flat, so disconnected from the world. But the answer is simple. You trained your nervous system to hide instead of face. Because escape became easier than endurance. And now you use porn not to feel good, but to stop feeling anything. You think you're getting better at handling life. You're just getting better at disappearing from it. So ask yourself, if the only way you can survive your emotions is to run from them, then what part of you will be left when there's nowhere else to hide? End of topic 5. Shall we continue into topic 6? The fragmentation of sexual identity, how porn distorts your desires and sense of self. You once knew what turned you on, or at least you thought you did. But over time, the images changed. The categories changed. The things you clicked on and couldn't believe you clicked on began to feel like you. You tell yourself it's curiosity, exploration, freedom. But what if it's something else? What if porn hasn't revealed who you are, but reshaped you into something you don't even recognize? Topic 6. The fragmentation of sexual identity, how porn distorts your desires and sense of self. Sexuality was never supposed to be simple. It's not a checkbox, not a label. It's a spectrum, fluid, evolving, woven into your history, your trauma, your longings, your relationships. It's not what you click on. It's what you feel in the presence of another. But porn rewrites that. Porn doesn't care about your truth. It offers something faster, identity by algorithm. You begin with a preference, something familiar, something safe. But over time, the content intensifies. You don't even notice the shift. A suggestion here, a recommendation there. The scenes get rougher, stranger, more extreme, and you keep watching. Not because you want to, but because it's new, because it spikes the needle, and your brain learns. This is associative conditioning, a process by which your mind begins to attach arousal to repeated visual patterns, not meaning. Soon, you're no longer responding to the feeling of desire. You're responding to categories, positions, talks, a fetishized checklist that replaces connection with content. And here is the fracture. Because your arousal begins to drift. It leaves the body, leaves the person, and attaches itself to concepts. You're no longer turned on by humans. You're turned on by categories of humans, by roles, power dynamics, costumes, fantasies. The person disappears. You fragment them. And in doing so, you fragment yourself. You begin to wonder, why does this turn me on now? Why doesn't that turn me on anymore? Why do I need this specific scenario to feel anything? These are not random questions. They are symptoms of neuroplasticity gone sideways, of erotic imprinting altered by overstimulation. Your arousal template has been hacked. You're not exploring your sexuality. You're being fed one. In one study by Kuhn and Gollanat, 2014, researchers found that frequent porn use correlates with decreased activation in the ventral striatum, a core reward area, meaning it takes more extreme content to achieve the same response. In another study, users reported feeling confused or concerned about the kinds of content they eventually became aroused by, even if it once repulsed them. You didn't choose these desires. They grew in you, or were grown in you, like a seed you didn't plant, watered by repetition. And now you're not sure who you are anymore. You hesitate before dates, before intimacy. You worry you won't perform, or worse, that you'll need something you can't explain. You start hiding, not because you're ashamed of desire, but because you no longer know if the desire belongs to you. Because you've become two selves, the self that watches, and the self that feels nothing unless the watched world is recreated. This is identity dissonance, the growing chasm between your behavior and your belief in who you are. And it's exhausting. You tell yourself it's just a kink, just a curiosity, but deep down something feels off, unstable, artificial, because you're not building desire. You're compiling it from bits, from tropes, from data. Your sexuality has become a playlist, and you don't even like the songs anymore, but you keep playing them because they still trigger something, and that something feels like you, but it isn't. It's a version of you the screen built. The longer you consume, the more your internal compass spins. You're aroused by things that don't match your values, things that would disturb you outside the screen. You rationalize it, but the dissonance grows. And soon, you don't just question your desires. You question yourself. Am I this? Why can't I stop watching that? What does it mean that I want this, but hate it the second it ends? This is not liberation. It's splintering. Porn does not just change what you like. It changes what you are allowed to feel safe liking. It confines your arousal to the known, to the immediate, to the overstimulated. You begin to feel bored by real people, confused by gentle touch, numb to soft desire, because it doesn't match the content. So you chase the content and lose the context. Your desire no longer grows in the presence of another person. It grows in the presence of tags, in keywords, in thumbnails, in loops. And now you can't tell. Was this always who I was? Or is this just who I've become? So tell me, if your sexuality can be shaped by repetition, manipulated by images, rewritten by escalation, then is it really yours? Or are you just borrowing it from a machine? End of topic 6. Would you like to continue with topic 7? Instant gratification and impulse control. What porn teaches your brain about waiting? You can't wait. You don't even remember what waiting feels like. If the page loads too slow, you refresh. If the clip doesn't excite you within seconds, you skip. If the pleasure doesn't come fast enough, you change the scene. You call this freedom, but it's something else. Something deeper. Something broken. Your brain is forgetting how to endure. Topic 7. Instant gratification and impulse control. What porn teaches your brain about waiting? Once you had patience, or maybe you just didn't have a choice. Pleasure used to be a process, earned, built, unfolding slowly like a story. Now it's a shortcut, and porn is the master key. You don't wait for arousal. You select it. You scroll through hundreds of clips, tens of tabs, and you find it in seconds. You never arrive anymore. You summon. But every time you do, you teach your brain something irreversible. I don't have to wait for reward. This is the heart of instant gratification. The neurological illusion that pleasure must be immediate or it's not worth the effort. You don't even notice it anymore. It lives in your fingertips, in your eyes, in the way you skip through a video Not because it's bad, but because you know something better might be just one scroll away. This is not just habit. It's a rewiring of impulse control. In studies of compulsive porn users, researchers have found reduced connectivity between the prefrontal cortex, the brain's decision-making center, and the limbic system, the emotional and reactive center. This weakening means your brain becomes less capable of resisting urges, delaying gratification, or planning long-term. The longer you use, the more automatic the pattern becomes. Impulse, action, numbness, repeat. You don't stop to question anymore. The moment the urge appears, the body obeys. You don't delay, don't negotiate. You just move, because the pleasure isn't just about climax. It's about relief from the weight. You don't just want dopamine. You want it now. But here's the paradox. The faster you get it, the less it satisfies. And so you chase harder. You click faster. You escalate quicker. Because the circuit no longer registers slow-building pleasure as real. It's too quiet, too delayed, too human. And the human becomes unbearable. You don't realize what you've lost until you try to do something slow. Study, work, date, heal, love. And suddenly, you're filled with restlessness. Not boredom, not fatigue, but a violent internal impatience that makes real life feel insufficient. Because porn taught you that everything meaningful must come fast. And if it doesn't, something is wrong. This is temporal compression, the brain's learned intolerance for time-based effort. You don't sit with discomfort anymore. You don't tolerate the in-between. You need resolution, climax, escape. Now, you begin to fear silence, avoid stillness, resent difficulty, because everything in you is screaming for shortcut. But real life doesn't work like that. Real intimacy takes time. Real productivity takes endurance. Real healing takes silence. Real pleasure takes slowness. And now, all of that feels like torture. You start 50 projects but finish none. You want connection but get annoyed by effort. You crave depth but can't stop skipping forward. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain was trained by repetition to reject delay. This is why you can't focus. This is why you scroll until your eyes blur. This is why you panic in silence. Because porn didn't just change how you get pleasure. It changed how you wait for it. And every time you give in, every time you click without pause, scratch the itch before it even forms, you weaken the muscle of control. Until there is no muscle left. Only reflex. Only need. Only now. And when you try to stop, not even quit, just pause, the circuitry fights back. You feel irritable, distracted, empty, because the waiting itself feels like pain. Not metaphorical pain, literal, biological discomfort in the dopaminergic system. You're not fighting desire. You're fighting your brain's new definition of time. So you relapse, not because the porn is irresistible, but because the waiting is. And now your entire nervous system expects the world to conform to that rhythm. Instant response. Instant reward. No delay. No challenge. No process. So what happens when you fall in love? When someone doesn't text back in 5 minutes? When they don't move the way a scene does? When they don't climax on cue? You grow impatient, cold, frustrated, detached. Not because they failed you, but because they asked you to wait. And you no longer can. So ask yourself, if your mind has been rewired to reject the very pace of human life, then what kind of future will you have when nothing and no one is ever fast enough? End of topic 7. Shall we continue into topic 8? Desensitization and numbness. When nothing excites you anymore. You used to feel something, desire, curiosity, excitement, but now nothing, or almost nothing. The spark that once lit up your body is gone. In its place, dullness, detachment, maybe disgust. You click through video after video, searching for something that can make you feel again, and each time, you feel less. What you're experiencing isn't failure. It's a neurological warning. Your reward system is burning out. Topic 8. Desensitization and numbness. When nothing excites you anymore. There's a point at which the brain stops responding. Not because the stimulus is gone, but because the system is overwhelmed. This is desensitization, the deadening of your internal circuits after repeated exposure to artificial intensity. It's not that porn stopped working. It's that your brain gave up trying to respond. This begins subtly. You need more time to get aroused, more extreme content to feel anything. What once excited you now feels boring. So you escalate, not because you're into it, but because it's the only thing that still cuts through the numbness. This is the cycle of tolerance. It works like any drug. The first exposure is powerful. The second, less so. The 10th, forgettable. So you increase the dose. But porn isn't a pill, it's infinite. So you keep increasing the stimulus instead. The content grows darker, riskier, more taboo, and still, it barely registers. You don't escalate because you're perverted. You escalate because you're numb. And that numbness spreads, not just to porn, but to everything. You lose interest in sex, in connection, in goals, in joy. It's not depression, though it may look like it. It's dopaminergic fatigue. The system responsible for reward, motivation, and drive has been flooded so often it now resists stimulation entirely. You wake up tired. You can't focus. You can't enjoy what used to matter. And so, you return to the screen. Not because you want to, because it's the only thing that still pretends to work. In a 2014 study, researchers found that frequent porn use was correlated with a blunted reward response in the brain, a flattened signal in the ventral striatum. This means that the same content that once triggered intense pleasure now triggers almost nothing. Your receptors are still there. They're just muted. And this muting has consequences. You can't bond. You can't commit. You can't feel anticipation. Because your brain has learned nothing satisfies. Not fully. Not truly. Not anymore. This is what anhedonia feels like. The inability to feel pleasure, even when it's in front of you. You go through the motions. You fake reactions. You pretend to be present. But the inside is quiet. Not peaceful. Dead. And no one knows. Because you smile. You function. You seem fine. But you're not fine. You're not even there. You become a spectator of your own life, watching yourself go through scenes that used to matter. Friends, art, food, sex. It's all just background noise now. And worse, even when something does break through, even when a real moment sparks a flicker of desire or joy, your brain doesn't trust it. It pulls away. It says this won't last. And it's right. Because the dopamine circuitry isn't just weak. It's rigged. Porn has taught it that pleasure must be extreme, fast, endless. So real life, with its slowness and flaws, can never measure up. You sit across from someone you care about and feel nothing. Not because they're boring, but because your mind expects fireworks, and they only offer a match. You can't even masturbate without a screen anymore. Your body doesn't respond to memory, to imagination, to presence. It only responds to conditioned input. Light, sound, motion, novelty. You're not aroused. You're programmed. And now, even the programming is wearing off. You watch clips you don't enjoy. You scroll through categories you once swore you'd never touch. You orgasm and feel nothing. No high, no relief, no release. Just the echo of something that used to matter. And you tell yourself it's just a phase, that it'll come back, that your spark isn't gone, that you just need to reset. But weeks pass, months, maybe years, and still, the numbness remains. Because this isn't about willpower. It's about wiring. You've numbed the very circuits that once gave life its texture. And now you can't find your way back. You look at beauty, and it's just form. You hear music, and it's just sound. You feel touch, and it's just pressure. Everything real feels less real than the screen. Everything alive feels less intense than the fantasy. And now you're stuck in the same body, with the same needs, but none of the fire. So ask yourself, if nothing excites you anymore, not because the world changed, but because your brain can no longer respond, then what kind of life are you left with? And if you can't feel the world, are you still in it? End of topic 8. Shall we continue into topic 9? Shame, secrecy, and the fracturing of the self. The inner split between the public you and the hidden you. You smile. You laugh. You hold conversations. You go to work, to school, to church. But deep inside, there's a part of you no one knows. The browser history, the late night spiral, the rituals, the guilt, the lies. You carry two versions of yourself, one that performs and one that hides. And every time you split yourself in two, the real you fades. Topic 9. Shame, secrecy, and the fracturing of the self. The inner split between the public you and the hidden you. There's the face you wear in public. And then there's the face that watches in the dark. You used to believe these were the same person, that your habits were just habits, that your secrets were temporary. But something has shifted. Now, when you laugh, it feels hollow. When you talk, you filter every word. When someone asks, "How are you?" you flinch just for a second, because there's a part of you they must never see. This is the architecture of shame, the internalized belief that something about you is fundamentally unlovable, unworthy, unclean. And with porn, it builds itself slowly, invisibly beneath the skin. At first, it's denial. I can stop whenever I want. This doesn't define me. Then negotiation. Only once more. I'll quit after this. Then hiding. Private tabs. Deleted histories. Change routines. And finally, fracture. You become two people, the one who functions and the one who watches. But here's the truth. This division is not psychological convenience. It's neurological strain. The more you split your identity, the more your sense of self begins to dissolve. This is called cognitive dissonance, the mental stress of holding two conflicting realities. You believe in honesty, but you lie. You believe in love, but you isolate. You believe in control, but you spiral. Your brain tries to reconcile it and eventually gives up, and you stop trusting yourself. Not just in porn, in everything. You say you'll be productive, but you're not. You say you'll reach out, but you don't. You say you'll quit, but you never do. And each broken promise corrodes your inner foundation. You feel like a fraud, not because others are judging you, but because you are, constantly, silently, without mercy. Every smile you give feels contaminated. Every compliment you receive feels undeserved. Because underneath it all, you believe, if they knew who I really was, they'd leave. That belief is not harmless. It shapes everything. You distance yourself from real relationships, afraid of being seen. You push people away, not because you hate them, but because closeness feels like risk. Vulnerability feels like exposure. And exposure means the secret might get out. So you retreat into your role. The confident one, the funny one, the smart one, the spiritual one. Whatever mask you've chosen, you wear it so well, even you forget it's a mask. Until you're alone. And then the real you surfaces. Ashamed, compulsive, lost. This inner split doesn't just create discomfort, it fractures identity. Because over time, you forget which self is real. Is it the one who watches quietly at 2 a.m. again? Or the one who sings in the car and makes people laugh? The answer is neither. Because the self has been broken. And every time you hide, you confirm the belief that you must. Which strengthens the shame. Which deepens the secrecy. Which widens the fracture. Until eventually, you're performing your whole life. Not living it. And no one knows. They compliment you, but it doesn't register. They love you, but you don't believe them. They invite you in, but you stay outside, smiling. Because the inside is full of rot. And yet, you protect it. Because it's yours. Because it's all you have left. You become addicted not just to the porn, but to the hiding. To the narrative of unworthiness. To the comfort of secrecy. Because if you're truly seen, then what? Then you might have to change. But change means tearing down the wall between selves. And you're not sure there's anything left on the other side. Because if you've only ever known how to live with a secret, then who will you be when there's nothing left to hide? Into topic 9. Shall we continue into topic 10? The collapse of meaning. How porn rewires your relationship to purpose, beauty, and the human experience. You used to believe life had meaning. That beauty mattered. That love, purpose, connection, all of it pointed somewhere. But now everything feels flat. The world is too slow. People are too complicated. Moments don't land the way they used to. It's not that you've stopped feeling. It's that porn has taught your brain that nothing is sacred, only stimulating. And when stimulation becomes your compass, you lose the map entirely. Topic 10. The collapse of meaning. How porn rewires your relationship to purpose, beauty, and the human experience. Meaning was never loud. It was found in pauses, in small, imperfect, unfiltered things. The curve of someone's back, the quiet way they looked at you, the long build of trust. But you don't live there anymore. You live on the screen, where nothing takes time, where no one needs to be loved, where everything is optimized for consumption. And consumption does not require meaning. It only requires response. You may not realize it yet, but porn has rewritten your entire relationship to reality. Not just to sex, not just to pleasure, but to life itself. Because when your brain is trained again and again to respond only to hyper-stimulating fragments, the real world starts to feel unbearable. Not painful, pointless. This is called hedonic adaptation, the process by which repeated exposure to intense stimulation flattens your response to ordinary experiences. And porn is built on precisely that. Intensity without context, climax without consequence, intimacy without relationship. Every time you watch, you're telling your brain, this is what matters. This is what's worth responding to. This is what I need. And the brain believes you. Neural circuits that once lit up in response to real connection now sit quiet. Receptors tuned to subtlety are drowned in noise. Pleasure becomes less about resonance and more about escalation. You no longer see beauty. You scan for arousal. You no longer listen. You scroll for dopamine. You no longer feel. You stimulate. This isn't just a psychological change. It's a neurochemical shift. Your brain's dopamine reward system begins to associate meaning with novelty, speed, control, not depth, slowness, or ambiguity. Real life, with its uncertainty and imperfection, becomes invisible to that system. So even when something beautiful appears, a song, a sunrise, a moment of eye contact, your body doesn't respond. Because it wasn't engineered for you. It wasn't filtered, tagged, optimized. It was just real. And your nervous system is no longer fluent in real. You watch people fall in love, and it feels like fiction. You hear someone speak about purpose, and it sounds like noise. You try to care about anything long-term, a goal, a relationship, a belief, and your mind slips away. Back into fantasy, back into loops, back into something easier. Because porn has trained you to treat life like a scene. If it doesn't entertain, skip it. If it doesn't reward, exit. If it doesn't obey, control it. And slowly, the world starts to blur. Moments no longer anchor you. People no longer move you. Emotions feel like static, annoying in the way. You chase stimulation, not because it satisfies, but because nothing else does. You feel disconnected, and you don't know why. You feel tired, but not sleepy. You feel sad, but not sure what you're mourning. You're not depressed, you're unplugged. And the more you try to plug back in, the more reality disappoints. Because no human body can match the endless novelty of pixels. No relationship can match the frictionless gratification of a scroll. No purpose can compete with the immediacy of climax. And so you tell yourself, nothing means anything. It's just the world. Maybe I'm broken, and maybe you are, but not in the way you think. Not spiritually, not morally, neurologically. You've been trained to believe that the only things worth your attention are the things that entertain you, stimulate you, respond to you. The rest is ignored. But life does not perform for you. Life invites you, and you've forgotten how to answer. So you go through the motions, pretending to care, pretending to feel, pretending to be present. But part of you is always elsewhere, waiting for the moment it's over. So you can go back to where it's easy, back to the screen, because it still whispers to you, this is enough, this is real, this is who you are, and you want to believe it. Because if this isn't meaning, then what is? And if you've trained your brain to reject anything that doesn't feel instantly good, then what future could ever be worth living in? End of topic 10.